The rooster crowed once, sharp against the hollow silence, and the cowboy's hand stilled on the rim of his coffee cup. Dust swirled in the dry air, curling past the porch boards as if carrying a warning. He set the cup down slow, eyes narrowing toward the chicken coop. A shadow shifted there, low, quick, careful. The latch clicked faintly. The cowboy rose. His boots creaked against the porch planks as he stepped into the sunlight, a revolver loose at his side. The desert was already hot, the kind of heat that clung heavy even at morning's edge. Nothing moved, but that shape crouched at the coop door. He watched. She slipped a hand inside, groping for eggs. The hens flapped and squawked, feathers scattering. She clutched 3 in a ragged scrap of cloth, teeth tight, eyes darting toward the horizon as if the land itself might chase her. "Best set those back gentle," he said, his voice flat as dry earth. She froze. Her shoulders tensed, breath caught sharp. Slowly, she turned, dust-streaked face half hidden beneath tangled hair. Eyes like gunmetal, tired, unbroken. The revolver never lifted, but it didn't need to. The weight of it hung between them. Her lips parted, cracked from thirst. I just need food. You're standing in my coop," he said, "taking what ain't yours." A silence stretched, broken only by the restless clucking of hens and the moan of wind dragging across the fence line. Her fingers gripped the bundle tighter. "Then shoot me." The cowboy's jaw shifted, slow and deliberate, like a man chewing over a memory that tasted of blood. His eyes traced her, ragged dress torn at the hem, boots worn through, skin baked raw by sun. Not bandit, not outlaw, just a woman scraped hollow by hunger. He lowered the revolver, but only an inch. "You want to work?" His voice carried gravel, heavy as the desert stones. Then, after a pause that thickened the air, "Or wear white beside me forever?" The words struck her harder than the sight of his gun. She blinked, lips trembling, not from fear, but from confusion. The wind pressed against her hair, lifted the corner of her torn shawl. She spat into the dust. What kind of man makes that offer with a gun in his hand? His mouth twitched, not quite a smile. The kind that don't waste bullets on folk who already carry death in their eyes. Her breath shuddered, and for the first time she lowered her gaze to the eggs balanced in her hands. They wobbled, fragile, the last thing tethering her to survival. She crouched, placed them back inside the coop one by one. The hens clucked soft, as if forgiving her. When she stood again, her fists were empty, but her shoulders squared. "I'll work," she said. The cowboy holstered his gun. The sound of leather creaking was the only answer at first. Then he jerked his chin toward the barn. "Tools by the door. Fences got holes bigger than sin. Start there." She walked past him, slow, wary. The smell of sweat and wood smoke clung to him. He didn't follow, just watched her figure stretch long against the sun. Behind them, the land sprawled wide and merciless. Endless dust plains cut with dry gulches, mountains etched like the bones of giants against a white-hot sky. A hawk wheeled overhead, its cry tearing through the silence. The cowboy's gaze lingered on the trail of her footsteps pressed into sand. Something about the way she carried herself, even in rags, even in hunger, like a soul that refused to kneel. He picked his cup back up, coffee gone cold. Took a sip anyway, bitter as the day beginning. The old porch boards creaked as he sank into his chair. His revolver sat heavy at his hip, though his hand no longer rested on it. His eyes, however, never left the barn. Inside, the woman found the hammer. Her hand trembled only once before closing around its handle. The sun climbed higher, spreading its fire across the ranch. The land breathed dust and silence. The cowboy leaned back in his chair, boots crossed, shadow cutting long across the dirt. And so it began, her hammer striking nails into old wood, his steady watch from the porch, the desert itself holding its breath. Some tales don't start with gunfire or gold. Some begin with stolen eggs, a hungry widow, and a cowboy's strange offer. Work or white, survival or forever. But the desert remembers. Always the desert remembers. The hammer slipped, smashing her thumb. She hissed through her teeth, dropped the plank, and pressed her hand to her mouth. Blood welled beneath the nail, purple swelling already rising. You hit wood. Not yourself, the cowboy's voice called from the porch, steady as the desert horizon. She turned her head, eyes sharp, sweat running down her temple. Maybe if your nails weren't bent, I'd manage. He didn't answer, just watched. The fence groaned under her weight as she drove the nail again, jaw clenched. Dust rose with each strike, sun burning her neck raw. Chickens wandered too close, pecking at her boots. She kicked lightly, not in anger, just enough to scatter them. Hours stretched. Sweat darkened the back of her dress, strands of hair sticking to her cheek. Still she worked, shoulders burning, breath ragged. Each strike of the hammer echoed across the dry land, like a drumbeat summoning something yet unseen. At last, the board held. She dropped the hammer, palms raw, splinters etched in skin. Her chest rose and fell, and for the first time she dared look at the cowboy. He sat, motionless, coffee steaming in his cup as though time bent differently for him. Fence holds, she muttered. He nodded once. Tomorrow, you mend the trough. She exhaled sharp, half a laugh. Don't even ask my name first? His gaze flicked to her, shadowed beneath the brim of his hat. Names don't build fences. Her smile died. She wiped dirt from her brow with the back of her hand, then stooped to collect the hammer again. That night, the fire crackled low in the hearth. She sat at the table, bowl of beans cooling before her. He leaned against the post by the doorway, shadow tall across the floorboards. You fight the work like it's the one that wronged you, he said, voice quiet. Her spoon scraped the bowl. Maybe it did. His eyes lingered, waiting. She set the spoon down, steel flashing in her gaze. Railroad men came through. Promised my husband wages for our land. Promises turned to threats. He refused. They shot him in front of me. Burned what they couldn't steal. Her voice caught, rough as gravel. I buried him with my own hands. Then I walked. The fire popped. The cowboy didn't move, didn't speak, only the hard set of his jaw shifting. Finally, that's weight enough for one life. She turned back to the bowl, though she wasn't eating. Weight don't vanish. It just rides with you. Days rolled like dust storms. She worked the ranch. Her hands blistered, then hardened. She hauled water, mended roofs, stacked feed. Her body carried exhaustion like old scars, but she never faltered. The cowboy's watchful silence pressed on her shoulders more than the labor. He spoke little, but when he did, his words cut deep as any blade. Post leans. Straighten it. You're using too much rope. Wasteful. Horse senses your nerves. Settle before you touch the reins. She cursed under her breath, but followed. And at night, when her body shook from fatigue, she sat by the fire and caught him watching her. Not with softness, but with something heavier. Like a man staring at a storm he knew would break the land apart, yet could not look away. It was in the town they first tasted other eyes. She had gone with him, reluctant, pulling her shawl close. Dust swirled in the street, saloon doors swinging with laughter that didn't belong to her. Inside the general store, whispers curled like smoke. But the woman he found, heard she stole from him. Widow, they say, or runaway. Their eyes pricked her back sharper than needles. She lifted her chin, clutching a sack of flour close, refusing to bow. The cowboy ignored them all, setting coins on the counter, his presence heavy enough to silence talk. But once outside, she muttered, You should have let me starve. Easier than this. He stopped, turned, his shadow tall against her in the glaring sun. They talk because they fear what they don't know. Let him. Ain't there fence you mend? Ain't there soil you till? Her chest tightened, words stuck. She looked away, down the long street lined with hitching posts and staring faces. The sound of a piano from the saloon drifted thin on the wind, mocking her. She gripped the flour tighter and walked on. That night, at the edge of the corral, he handed her a revolver. She frowned. What's this for? He held it steady, offering, eyes unblinking. Desert don't forgive the unarmed. Her fingers hovered, then closed around the grip. It felt too heavy, too certain. Go on, he said. Point. Fire. The shot cracked, sharp, scattering crows from the barn roof. Smoke curled from the barrel. Her hand shook, ears ringing. She lowered it, exhaling like she'd held her breath her whole life. He studied her slow. Not bad. Her laugh was short, bitter. My husband showed me once, said a woman might need more than prayers. She glanced at him. Didn't think I'd need it for real. The cowboy's eyes hardened at that, but his voice stayed even. Out here, real don't ask what you think. It just comes. The desert night stretched wide, stars spilling like silver over black. Coyotes cried distant, and the wind carried dust against the cabin walls. She lay awake on her cot, staring at the ceiling beams. Each creak of wood, each whisper of the wind pressed the weight of the land on her chest. The sound of the hammer, the whispers in town, the crack of the gun still ringing in her ears. And beneath it all, the cowboy's words, etched deep, work or wipe beside me forever. She clenched her fists against the thin blanket. She had chosen work, but the desert and the man who guarded it did not forget promises so easily. The door of the saloon slammed open, wind sweeping dust across the floorboards. Boots thudded heavy as the cattle baron's men poured in, spurs jangling, coats dragging grit. Laughter died around the tables. Cards froze mid-hand. Only the piano kept on, keys jangling out of tune that didn't fit the air anymore. At the bar, the widow's grip tightened on the flour sack she carried. The cowboy stood beside her, silent as stone, eyes fixed on the mirror behind the bottles. The reflection showed the men fanning out, shoulders broad, eyes mean, guns glinting under lamplight. One step close, sneering. Funny thing, man sitting out on land that don't belong to him. His gaze slid to the widow, lingering too long. And a woman patching fences like she owns it. The cowboy didn't move, didn't even turn his head. His voice was flat. Ain't your land, ain't your woman. The saloon hushed to nothing but breath. The man's grin twitched. Fingers tapped the butt of his gun. But before steel cleared leather, the baron himself walked in, hat wide, boots polished, silver watch chain glittering in lamplight. He raised a hand, stopping the draw. Not here. His voice rolled smooth but thick with threat. He looked the widow over, then the cowboy. You got something of mine. That spread's marked for the railroad. You hold it, you stand in my way. The cowboy met his eyes through the mirror, expression unreadable. Then I reckon I'm in your way. The baron's smile held no humor. By sunrise, you won't be. He tipped his hat, turned, and strode out, men following like shadows. The door swung shut, rattling the glass, leaving only silence behind. The widow's heart hammered against her ribs. She set the flour sack down before it slipped from her grip. The cowboy dropped coins on the bar and walked out without a word. She followed, dust curling up around their boots as they stepped into the fading light. That night, the barn creaked in the wind. Horses stamped restless, sensing something on the air. The widow stood with a revolver in her hands, sighting down the barrel at a bottle balanced on a post. The cowboy watched from the fence. Breathe out slow when you squeeze. She pulled the trigger. Glass shattered, sparkling like fireflies in the dusk. Her hand trembled only slightly as she lowered the gun. She turned to him, eyes lit by the glow of the lantern swinging overhead. If they come, I won't run. His face was shadow under his hat, but his voice carried the weight of years. Run or not, you'll need a steady hand. They don't fire warning shots. She reloaded, jaw tight. Neither will I. Word spread in town by morning. At the general store, voices buzzed like flies. Baron's men riding out come nightfall. Gunfight'll be dust before dawn. Widow too, poor thing. By the livery, old men shook their heads. Heard that cowboy's more than he lets on. Some say he was quick as the devil's shadow once. Don't matter. Nobody stands against the baron. Rumors grew until even children whispered of it, wide-eyed, playing at duels in the dirt. At the ranch, the widow stacked, kindling high by the doorway. Every slam of wood on wood echoed louder than her heartbeat. She glanced toward the horizon, where heat shimmered and dust trails hinted at riders far off. The cowboy sat on the porch, polishing his revolver. Each movement was slow, methodical, like a man sharpening not just steel, but memory. She wiped her hands, stepped closer. Why don't you leave? You could walk away tonight. Let it all burn behind you. His thumb pressed the chamber into place. He looked at her, gaze heavy with something she couldn't name. A man runs once, he'll run forever. Ain't my way. Her chest tightened, but she said nothing more. She only sat on the steps, the weight of silence between them louder than words. The storm broke at dusk. Horses thundered across the ridge, riders dark against the blood-red sky. Torches blazed, smoke rising in thin black trails. The widow's hand gripped the revolver so tight her knuckles whitened. The cowboy stood, revolver low at his side, eyes fixed on the glow cresting the hills. The barn animals kicked and whinnied, restless as if they too felt the fire coming. The first torch arced through the air, spinning bright before slamming into the barn roof. Flames licked the dry wood, roaring up with greedy speed. Smoke choked the sky, sparks flying like devil's eyes. The widow raised her gun, heart slamming. Shadows closed in, horses circling. Laughter rang cruel from the riders. A voice bellowed through the smoke, the Baron's clear and commanding. Last chance. Leave the land or burn with it. The cowboy stepped forward, coat whipping in the hot wind. His voice carried like steel on stone. Guess we'll see who burns. The widow lifted her revolver, standing beside him. Smoke curled around them, the fire's glow painting their figures red against the dark. The desert had gone silent, holding its breath for the first shot. Flames tore skyward, crackling, spitting sparks into the black. The barn's roof sagged, timbers shrieking, smoke choking the air. Horses screamed against their stalls. The widow fired first, her shot cracking through the blaze, scattering riders back from the fence line. The cowboy stepped into the firelight, revolver loose at his side, eyes locked on the shadows moving in smoke. The Baron's men circled, torches bobbing, their laughter low and hungry. Take him down, a voice snarled. Gunfire ripped the night. Bullets sparked against stone, tore splinters from fence posts. The widow ducked low, firing back, her braid whipping as the heat pressed her lungs. A rider toppled from his saddle, dust rising where he fell. She tasted ash on her tongue, sweat stinging her eyes. Still, her hands were steady, the gun loud in her grip. Each shot rang with years of grief, with nights buried in hunger and silence. The cowboy moved like shadow, calm, precise. He fired, turned, fired again, never hurried, never wasted. His figure glowed in the fire's red, coat whipping, each step measured like a man walking through memory. One rider fell, clutching his chest. Another screamed, horse rearing wild. The Baron's voice cut through the smoke. You think you can stand against me, old man? The cowboy answered only with steel, another bullet finding its mark. But the widow heard it in the way his breath came, like the weight of years pressed on his chest, like he'd carried this fight long before tonight. The Baron rode forward, torch high, revolver gleaming. His men fanned out, circling, waiting for the signal. The widow reloaded fast, sweat dripping from her chin. She crouched behind the trough, heart hammering. Smoke curled past her cheek, stung her eyes. She rose and fired, hitting the torch from a rider's hand. Flames splattered in dirt, dying in sparks. Good, the cowboy muttered, eyes never leaving the Baron. The widow swallowed hard. I told you, I won't run. He shifted, gaze flicking once to her. In the fire's glare, his eyes carried something raw, respect, old as the desert itself. Then the Baron called out, voice sharp, face me, gunfighter, or hide behind your woman. The night held still. Even the horses froze, smoke curling between them like a curtain. The cowboy stepped forward. His revolver spun once, settling firm in his grip. I don't hide. The Baron dismounted, boots sinking in the dust. His men backed, forming a wide circle, torches ringing the blaze. The widow rose, breath trapped in her throat. The two men faced each other, flames hissing behind. The Baron's grin shone white in the firelight. I heard tell of you. Said you laid your guns down years ago. Said the desert swallowed you whole. Guess they lied. The cowboy's jaw clenched. He raised his revolver, steady as stone. Guess they did. Silence. A heartbeat. The widow's hand trembled on her revolver, but she didn't move, didn't breathe. The Baron drew. 2 shots cracked as one. Dust leapt. Horses screamed. The Baron staggered, clutching his chest, eyes wide with disbelief. He fell hard, torch rolling from his grasp, fire sputtering into black. The cowboy lowered his gun slow, smoke drifting from the barrel. His eyes never left the body sprawled in dirt. Around them, the riders froze. One by one, they backed their horses, torches lowering, eyes wide at the sight. The Baron lay still, dust swallowing him whole. Without him, their fight was gone. They turned, melted into the night, hoofbeats fading over the ridge. The fire roared on the barn, but the storm had passed. The widow dropped to her knees, revolver slipping from her grasp, breath shaking. Her chest heaved, smoke filling her lungs. She looked to the cowboy, silhouetted against flame and ash. Her voice broke, but she forced the words out. You were one of them. One of the gunfighters they whispered about. He holstered his weapon, slow, heavy. Was. The barn roof collapsed behind, sparks clawing at the sky. The widow's eyes shone with firelight, wide with the weight of what she had seen. And now, she asked. His gaze met hers. His face was cut deep with lines of loss. Yet his voice held something steady, something unshaken. Now I'm just a man with a ranch, and a woman who can shoot straighter than most. Her laugh cracked, half sob, half fire. She wiped ash from her cheek, standing, revolver back at her hand. Guess that makes us both more than they reckoned. They stood side by side, flames dying low, smoke curling into the stars. The desert night held them, silent, vast, eternal. And from somewhere beyond, in the echo of the land, the old storyteller's voice rose. Some say she stole eggs that day. Others say she stole his heart. But all agree, the desert remembers the night a widow and a weary gunfighter faced fire and lead and carved their names in a legend. Their shadows walk still, long as the sun scorches earth and the coyotes cry at dusk. For not all heroes wear iron on their hips. Some rise from hunger, some from sorrow, and some from love found in the ashes of fire. The wind swept the last of the smoke away. The land lay quiet once more, and a legend remained.